Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And in this particular video, what I want to talk about is to discuss a number of changes that I do believe Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires could really benefit from. Now, Realms of Chaos, that is a different discussion. Realms of Chaos could certainly use its own update, undeniably so. And Realms of Chaos could use a significant map rework to actually make it work with any kind of DLC, because right now it's honestly not really going to work all that well with any kind of DLC that Creative Assembly would release for it. And that is absolutely a problem that Creative Assembly does need to tackle one way or another. It isn't a great situation what is happening at the moment with regards to Realms of Chaos, especially since they keep making content for it. But regardless, let's talk about Immortal Empires, some of the things that Creative Assembly can change, should improve. First off, we need to talk about performance. Now, performance can imply many things, but I think there's two key aspects over here that need to be addressed. The first aspect that we need to talk about is intern performance. The intern performance in Warhammer 3 at the moment is not that great. So if I click this button, it's generally going to take, let's say, 1-2 minutes to go through this. Keep in mind, this is on a fairly powerful computer. My CPU certainly isn't the very best right now. As it is, it's a 9700K. I imagine if I got a better CPU, this would improve. But my SSD certainly is. My GPU is a 4070 Ti, so I do have a good computer overall. I have a computer that can handle a vast majority of games much better, and we have games like Cyberpunk that load better, that have overall better performance. Right now, in the game, you have this situation where the intern timer and the loading screens of the game, and anything related to performance, but it's really the intern timer and the loading screen performance that really downgrades the experience that we have in Total War at the moment. This is something that could be better, and from these kind of issues, you end up with other issues as well. It's not like, oh, we only have an issue with regards to end turn performance. No, we have an issue in terms in loading time performance. No, we have an issue because if the intern performs badly, then that means you're going to want to get through campaigns faster, because you're not going to want to waste minutes and minutes and minutes of your life going through the intern button simulator, nor are you as a player really going to want to engage in as many battles as you would otherwise if you're having to spend 1 minute going into a battle, 1 minute going out of battle, and that's on my computer. It's roughly 1.5 minutes. Depends on the situation. It can be 2 minutes, can be longer, can be faster. Depends on the situation. I'd say 1.5 minutes is the average I do get with getting into a battle, getting out of a battle. And a battle may last a couple of minutes. Let's say a short battle. A lot of the battles you fight in a campaign, they're relatively short battles. They're not annoying to play. What is annoying that I might spend just as much time just getting into the battle and getting out of the battle. That is something that does reduce my enjoyment of the game. Because, for instance, I've played Ultimate General American Revolution as an example. In that game, you have a lot of manual battles to fight. Absolutely. But the battles themselves are pretty fast, and while the loading time is certainly not a perfect one, it is actually better, significantly better, than what we have right here in Warhammer 3 at the moment. So that is something that I do believe Creative Assembly does need to work on. Something that they need to improve as things currently stand. So the performance aspect overall, and it's not just that. It's not just like intern performance or anything like that. It's more. It's also the idea of the performance that you get when you're seeing a lot of this map. So the map right now doesn't run especially well. Like, I actually get better performance in battles. That's a bit ridiculous. Like, I am all well for good visuals on a campaign map, But I think that there's so much detail that they've crammed into it, and it's just fluff, really. Let's be clear on this. It's just fluff. I would rather have better frame rate. Like, this gets especially bad if you're playing an Oxyatl campaign, because the performance of that particular campaign is going to go in the toilet very, very quickly when you are playing that particular campaign. That is not great. That is not a good experience to be engaged in. So that is one of the things that I would certainly hope that Creative Assembly improves on. Essentially, what I am saying over here is that Creative Assembly needs to give us a Potion of Speed update for Warhammer 3. Because that's what the Potion of Speed did for Warhammer 2. Because the in-turn performance and the overall performance of Warhammer 2, it wasn't just good enough for Immortal Empires. Like, yes, Warhammer 1 and in general did vastly improve performance in Total War. But with that big map of Immortal Empires, we started seeing limitations. Now, I'm not sure if Creative Assembly can crank up more out of this engine, as things currently are. But I do believe that this is one of those aspects where they really do need to improve things compared to how they currently play out. So, for instance, because right now, for instance, I am playing with Autoresolve mods just because I don't want to go for the loading screens. Also, performance-wise, I am playing on Legendary, but I'm using a mod that disables the autosave. The reason behind that is because that autosave situation also reduces your performance. Yes, this is not a joke. This is not a minor detail that you can't just ignore. No, this is a major issue as it currently exists in the game. And it's something that I feel Creative Assembly needs to improve on overall. And not just like, you know, not just some minor fixes, but the significant improvement with regards to that. The second thing that I want to talk about, and this is one of the reasons I'm using Alain, is campaign pacing. There's a lot of campaigns that work just fine when they were released for Warhammer. That they work just fine when they were released for Warhammer 1 or 2. But they do not work so well. They do not work so well for Warhammer 3. The reason is because of the various changes that Creative Assembly has made with regards to campaign pacing, supply lines, growth, public order, etc. And because of the way certain races work, you end up with races that end up being far ahead compared to others. Even races that are good end up falling behind compared to others simply because they do not have the ability of dominating the early game as much as possible. Now you might ask why. Well, why does that matter? Well, consider something like the High Elf hero capacity. With High Elf hero capacity, you need tier 4 to increase capacity for the most part. I'm empowered by with the exception of like certain lord effects or something along those lines. Alariel is the major exception in this because she can increase handmaiden capacity at tier 3. But consider a campaign like the Greenskins, consider a campaign like the Dark Elves, consider a campaign like the Skaven. You end up with campaigns where you can get a lot more done in those campaigns faster. And this is not just something like, oh, it just affects your early game. No, it affects your entire campaign and the entire campaign pacing, because what that really means and what that will really do for you it will create this kind of situation where you kind of realize that what ends up happening in those kind of campaigns is you have campaigns where you can maintain heroes for every single army, every single lord, and you can maintain more armies than others. You have campaigns that excel at building up very quickly, but more importantly, you are setting a pace for the entire campaign. Being able to increase hero capacity, being able to access different unit types faster in the campaign is not just relevant for the early game, it's relevant throughout the entire campaign. High Elves do well because they have other benefits, control being a particular one. But in general, you can achieve a lot more in terms of campaign if you're playing as Dark Elf. So that kind of campaign balancing, if you will, or pacing, regardless, that kind of situation is something that I do believe, in a very firm manner, needs to be changed by Creative Assembly. Because right now, the way their campaigns are paced is not especially great. from where I'm standing on the subject. Could be better, should be better. Like, we need more commonality between campaigns. Now, some people are gonna say here that, oh, you just want every campaign to be the same. That is a load of rubbish. I'm sorry, but anyone who makes that argument about anything I'm saying in my videos, I'm sorry, that is a load of rubbish. The reason I say that is because my favorite campaigns are all very different campaigns. Like, my favorite campaigns are things like Oxyato, things like Boris Ursus, things like Grimgore, things like Morathi. Do they play the same? They sure as hell don't play the same. They have very different playstyles. Different playstyles can be achieved not through things like growth or casualty replenishment or Autoresolve being very dissimilar, because that just leads to certain races being more powerful than others, which hurts you if you're playing them, but also hurts the AI. Like, for instance, if I'm fighting against the Vampire Coast or Norska, I know I don't really have to put in much effort to deal with them, because I know that the cheap-ass army of mine, if I'm playing High Elves or let alone something like the Dwarves, will just obliterate them in terms of the Autoresolve result. I am well aware of that dynamic that exists in a campaign, so I can take advantage of it. That's the problem with, like, cheap, bad Autoresolve, because you can use it, and the AI ends up being hurt by that particular dynamic far more so than you are, because you can always, at least when you're playing Dark Elves, you can always, at the very least, when you're playing Vampire Coast, sorry, you can always, at the very least, auto-resolve every single battle. Not auto-resolve, fight every battle manually, as opposed to auto-resolving it. The AI is always going to be forced to auto-resolve it. And when was the last time in Legendary you saw, like, the Vampire Coast amount to anything in a campaign? It can happen. Extremely rarely, when you have something like faction potential really kicking in and playing a major role in that. But extremely rarely does it happen during the course of a campaign. And that's really the point I'm getting at here. That is something Creative Assembly can change and should change. Like, making heroes available earlier in a campaign, making units available. Like, some units and heroes requiring tier 5 is absolutely absurd, just to be able to get them in the first place, let alone things like capacity. That is absolutely absurd, because what it really means from a practical standpoint is no one's really going to play with those heroes. No one's going to play with those units. Like, I've played so many Dark Elven campaigns or so many Kislev campaigns. Do you know how many times I've bothered with things like elemental bears or things like black dragons? None. Like, of all the Dark Elven campaigns, actually dragons in general, except the Immer campaigns, for instance, I have not bothered with those at all, because there's no reason to it. Because even if I do unlock them, what's the benefit in getting something like a dragon as opposed to me recruiting like 2-3 different other units of archers, for instance, High Elven archers, or Black Ark Corsairs, or Dark Shards with shields? That is the problem. It was different in Warhammer 2, because supply lines meant that you wanted to make each army as powerful as possible, because you couldn't maintain as many armies. With supply lines severely reduced, we now have a different dynamic, and the balancing that existed beforehand doesn't work anymore. Building doom stacks is a waste of time. Like, some people would say, like, well, we need unit caps, like SFO has them, because otherwise people would just build doom stacks. You don't build fucking doom stacks in Warhammer 3. It's one of the worst decisions you can make as a player. And actually, by the time you build doom stacks, you've long won the campaign, so it's meaningless. Like, that whole doom stack argument is just completely and utterly pointless, for instance. So those are some of the things, some of the aspects I do believe Creative Assembly needs to change. Like, just pacing in general in their campaigns does need to work differently. Third, updates, campaign updates. What do I mean by that? Like, beyond just the fact of changes, what we need from Creative Assembly right now, I would say, and it would be very important, but one of the things that we could really use right now in Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires is a more proactive stance by Creative Assembly in terms of updating the game. But when I say updates, I'm not talking about, like, oh, let's change the price of a unit by 50 or something like that. No. Let's fix campaign systems that just don't work. let's fix bugs, let's update races, let's improve economies. Like, the fact that Creative Assembly has left Kislev's economy, for instance, in the exact same position that it was at launch, without any change, and all of this time, is freaking ridiculous. Like, that is just an absurd level of how they've handled it. In all of these updates, you can't say they don't care about updating the game. It's like they just don't want to do something like this. Admittedly, I don't quite understand why they don't want to update the game in that perspective. Maybe someone could clue me in on that particular subject. But as things stand right now, we see Creative Assembly just being unwilling to update certain things that they should. We see simple fixes, like there are some things that require major overhauls, like the Empire. Though honestly, I think if they just removed the Imperial Authority and had us deal with the regular diplomatic system, that would be much better. But you see how Creative Assembly has all these minor issues in their game. Yes, and we're talking minor issues. Casualty replenishment can be tweaked, Autoresolve can be tweaked, believe it or not. There's a lot of problems that could be easily fixed if Creative Assembly just cared to do it. Why exactly they don't want to do it, that's a different discussion. But they should be willing to take a more proactive stance with regards to just tweaking the numbers around. Who's going to care if Norscad gets triple the economy or Kislev gets double the economy? Will it change the dynamic that Kislev has under AI control? Probably not really all that much, because the AI already cheats in a very substantial way. So those are the kind of things like tweaking the numbers, things like Autoresolve, things like casualty replenishment. And no, not using Autoresolve as a difficulty balancing tool. I can understand it against AI, but when you play on very hard battle difficulty and the Autoresolve gets dragged against you just because you're playing on very hard, it's not a good experience. Because it's like, oh, the AI is better on very hard. No. I mean, the AI is obviously stronger when you set the AI stats modifier and maybe change that situation. But you have this, by the way, ridiculous dynamic. A lot of people have complained that the AI is too passive in Warhammer 3. But the reason it's too passive is because its behavior on the campaign map is tied directly to the Autoresolve, which is tied directly to your battle difficulty. Set the battle difficulty to very hard and see how the AI performs on the campaign map. And keep in mind, keep it on very hard. It will, you might be surprised by the results. If you don't, or if you don't want to necessarily deal with the shitty Autoresolve that you personally get playing on very hard battle difficulty, one of the things you can do in this situation is use an Autoresolve mod like myself to kind of nullify the higher effect, because the Autoresolve situation doesn't matter. Like, Autoresolve is a load of rubbish. It doesn't reflect power at all. It's something you can abuse in a lot of situations. The fact that every settlement has an Autoresolve benefit means the entire system is worthless, because like actual army compositions don't matter. Like I build armies that I would use in battles, but it actually doesn't matter. Because like what I really should be doing for the most part is building armies that would be good in Autoresolve. So units with high leadership power armor. It's those kind of things that, you know, when we're talking about updates and fixes, like why is range combat in Warhammer 3 still broken to this day? Why is it that mods like Radius and SFO can do that better? Why X, Y, and Z? Why are simple mods coming out with fixes in Creative Assembly in 2 years has not fixed some fundamental issues that have existed since launch? Those are some of the things that I think Creative Assembly needs to address. I don't care at all about the new units, Lords, and Heroes of SOC. I'll just say that much. To me, it's all meaningless. The thing that I think Creative Assembly should be judged going forward on whether they have turned a new page and they're doing things in a different way. What I would judge them on is how much are they willing to do some of the things I've mentioned here. Performance updates, campaign systems updates, more frequent updates, fixing Lords, not ignoring Lords, not stripping away features as they did for the High Elves. Because one of the things they stripped away from the High Elves was they removed us getting vision with trade agreements, and they give that exclusively to Yanbo. Creative Assembly, we know what you're doing. Like, some people want to justify that, fair enough, to justify whatever they want, but we all know why they did it. Certain systems need to be updated, like, I think the influence system for the High Elves was fine when it came out. It's no longer a good system. Like, spending 60 influence just to get a trait is ridiculous, especially when you can abuse the load save character system. which they created. It's not like I'm using a mod for that. Also, you know, adding certain features like some kind of variant of the warband upgrade system for every race would be great. I understand they want to keep that exclusive for Warriors of Chaos, though I want to point out, Be'lakor is free for everyone that plays the game. No joke. Be'lakor, who I'm literally going to declare war on deliberately, is free for everyone. So it's not like, oh, we just want to keep it the pay DLC exclusive. Come on, CA. We all know what's going on here with regards to that. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Questine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.